Hi, today we are going to practice adding and subtracting simple fractions. Here we go. Before we get started, I want to go over two important terms. LCM. LCM stands for least common multiple. What is a multiple? Sometimes we mix up multiples and factors. A multiple is simply when you count by a number. So the multiples of 2 are 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, and they go on and on forever. Multiples of 5, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, and it goes on and on forever. Okay, so a least common multiple is very useful when we're working with fractions. What can a least common multiple help us do? It will help us find the best common denominator. Another important term is the GCF. What is a GCF? It means greatest common factor. What exactly is a factor? A factor is a number that multiplies with another number to give you a product. Every number has a specific number of factors. For example, the factors of 10 are all the numbers that multiply together to give you 10. So 1 and 10, 2 and 5. I'm just writing them in order from least to greatest. So these are the factors of 10 because these are the only whole numbers I can multiply together to give me 10. So 10, you would say, has 4 factors. Why do we need to know the greatest common factor? We use the greatest common factor to help us simplify or reduce a fraction. So pause if you need to copy these down. We'll be referring to LCM and GCF a lot during this video. Okay, let's do some examples. Now, the goal is to be able to do this mentally, meaning we shouldn't have to write out all of the calculations. We should simply be able to look at these questions, do some figuring out in our head, and then write the answer. So what I'm going to do is show in a different color what you might be thinking in your head to help you find the answer. And if you do need to jot things down along the way to help you out, that's okay. The more you practice, the quicker you'll get, and the less you'll have to write things down. You'll just be able to get straight to the answer in your head. So we should know by now that to add two fractions, we have to first have a common denominator. And this is where we use our LCM, our least common multiple. So the least common multiple between 4 and 2 is 4. So I'm going to, this is just what I'm thinking. So ideally, you wouldn't have to write this down, you could just think this. Since I'm going to use 4 as my common denominator, this one doesn't have to change because it already has a 4. So really I just have to deal with this 1/2. 1/2 is equivalent to 2 quarters. So now that I can think of this in my head, I know that 1/2 is really 2 quarters, so I can think, what's 2 quarters plus 1 quarter? 3 quarters. So we're adding our numerators and we keep our common denominator. Let's look at 3 quarters plus 1/8. The least common multiple between 4 and 8 is 8. So in my head, I'm just thinking, okay, 1/8 doesn't have to change. It's just the 3 quarters. We need to write this in terms of eighths. So I'll need to double both the numerator and the denominator. So 3 quarters is really the same as 6/8. So now I'm thinking 6/8 plus 1/8. That gives me 7/8. Exact same strategy for subtraction. What is my least common multiple between a 5 and a 10? It's going to be 10. So that means this won't have to change. Just my 4/5 has to be rewritten in terms of tenths. So I'm going to have to double both my numerator and denominator. So 4/5 I'll think of as 8 tenths. Remember, we're trying to just hold this in our head and not actually have to write it down. 8/10 minus 3/10 equals 5/10. Now, in this case, I see 5 and 10, they have a common factor. Their GCF, or their greatest common factor, is 5. So I'm going to reduce this fraction. I'm thinking in my head, greatest common factor is 5, so I'm going to divide both by 5. We're just thinking this to simplify our fraction to 1/2. 2/3 minus 1/2. Okay, what is the least common multiple between 3 and 2? Well, it's not 3 or 2, unlike the other ones. It is 6. So we're going to have to rewrite each of these. 2/3, I'm going to have to double each of the numbers. 2/3 is equal to 4/6. I'm going to have to triple the numerator and then the denominator in this case. So here's what we're thinking in our head. Thinking 4/6 minus 3/6 equals 1/6. Okay, now it's your turn. Okay, now pause the video, try these questions, and then come on back and check your answers. Here we have fifths and halves. The least common multiple between 5 and 2 is a 10, so my answer is going to be expressed in tenths. 1/5 is the same as 2/10. 1/2 is the same as 5/10. So 2/10 plus 5/10 gives me 7/10. Here we've got tenths and halves. The least common multiple between 10 and 2 is 10. So I'll express my answer as tenths. 9/10 doesn't have to change. Minus 1/2. 1/2 is equivalent to 5/10. So I'll be saying or thinking 9/10 minus 5/10 equals 4/10. Now, this can be reduced. They're both even numbers, which means that they can both be divided by 2. So I'm just going to fix or finish my answer by dividing both the numerator and the denominator by 2 to reduce it to 2/5. So both answers are correct, but this is just your finished answer. That one can't be reduced. Okay, here we have 12ths and 6ths. The common multiple, the least common multiple between 12 and 6 is 12. So this one won't have to change. 11/12 minus 1/6 is equivalent to 2/12. So 11 minus 9 is 2. Sorry, 11 minus 2 is 9. Let me say that again. 1/6 is equivalent to 2/12. So I'm thinking 11 minus 2 equals 9. Now I notice that this can be reduced because 9 and 12 have a common factor of 3. So I'm going to divide the numerator and denominator by 3, which will give me 3/4. Okay, so this is still correct, but this is just finished. It's a simplified answer. 3/5 plus 4/10. The least common multiple between 5 and 10 is 10, so I'll think in terms of tenths. So this won't have to change. 3/5 is equivalent to 6/10. So here I have 6/10 plus 4/10 equals 10/10. And whenever I have a fraction with the same number on top and bottom, that simplifies to 1. The greatest common factor between 10 and 10 is 10, so if I were to divide both numerator and denominator by 10, I would get 1/1, which simplifies to 1.